I'm not sure how many of you guys are NBA fans, but Kevin Durant actually requested a trade today, and if you want that in hockey terms, basically Kevin Durant has been in the conversation for being the best player in the NBA for over a decade now. So basically take any NHL player who's been one of the best in the league for a very long time and picture them requesting a trade. Now that Kevin Durant trade request is actually the inspiration for today's video because it got me thinking of crazy trade request instances in NHL history. So I put together some of my favorite trade request stories for this video, whether it's why a player requested a trade or how they went about requesting that trade. I really think you guys are going to find this interesting, so if you enjoy and you want to see more videos like this, please be sure to leave it a like. The first trade request story we're going to cover today took place back in the early 1990s involving Chicago Blackhawks legend Steve Larmer. Now a little bit about Steve Larmer before we get into the trade request itself, because I'm sure there's a good amount of younger viewers watching this. Like I said, Larmer is a Blackhawks legend, one of the greatest players in their franchise history. He played for the team for 13 seasons and amassed over 920 points. He won the Calder Trophy as NHL's Rookie of the Year with the Hawks in 1983. He was a beast for a long time, but unfortunately the Hawks were never able to reach the ultimate goal with Steve Larmer on the team, which is obviously the Stanley Cup. So heading into the 1993-94 season, Steve Larmer's career was winding down. He figured it was time for a change, so he requested a trade away from the Chicago Blackhawks. In an interview in 2017, when looking back on his trade request, Steve Larmer said he didn't have any regrets, and he wouldn't say that the team was in a rebuild, but he felt they were stuck in neutral, and that was the reason for his trade request. Pretty normal reason to request a trade, right? Especially at his age and where he was at in his career, but that's not why I find this story so interesting. At the time of Larmer's request in the 93 offseason, he was rocking an Ironman streak of 884 games, 11 seasons without missing a single game, which is actually currently the 6th longest Ironman streak in NHL history, and at the time it would have been the 3rd longest. The reason that Ironman streak ended is actually because of the trade request. You know how sometimes a player will request a trade, it'll be made public, for an example like Vladimir Tarasenko heading into this season or Jake DeBrusk a couple of months into this season, but those still players, even though they requested a trade, they still suited up and played for their teams. Well, that wasn't the case with Larmer. The Hawks didn't accommodate his trade request right away, and as a result he missed the first 13 games in the 93-94 season, putting an end to that massive Ironman streak. Now again, Steve Larmer did say in an interview in 2017 that he doesn't regret a thing, and I mean, why would he? Because that trade request directly led to him actually winning a Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers in that 1993-94 season. The next trade request story we have to talk about is actually the most recent one we're going to go over in this video, involving Marty St. Louis. At the time of his request, he was a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and looking back at this story, I'm not sure if this was a petty move or not by Marty St. Louis. You guys can let me know how you feel about it down below in the comment section. I'm sure everybody watching this knows who Marty St. Louis is. He was one of the most electric players to watch in the league throughout the 2000s. He was a fan favorite due to him being just 5'8", incredibly undersized, had the odds stacked against him, and was still able to carve out a pretty amazing career. And St. Louis' game aged beautifully. He was still a beast towards the end of his career in his late 30s, and that's actually when this trade request took place. It was amidst the 2013-14 season, a season that had an Olympic break, because at the time NHL players were participating in the Olympics. It was an Olympic year, and the general manager of Team Canada's Olympic team that year happened to be Steve Yzerman, who at the time also happened to be the general manager of Marty St. Louis' Tampa Bay Lightning. So basically, the story goes, Steve Yzerman cut Marty St. Louis from the Olympic team originally. He wasn't selected, and apparently Marty St. Louis felt he was done so wrong by Steve Yzerman, his own general manager, that he actually requested a trade. And the funny thing about St. Louis' trade request was the only team he would accept a trade to, because at the time he had a full no move clause, was the New York Rangers. And the funny thing is, Marty St. Louis actually still ended up playing for Team Canada in the 2014 Olympics, winning the gold medal because he was selected as an injury replacement for his Tampa Bay Lightning teammate Steven Stamkos, but that didn't change his mind. I guess he still felt he was done wrong by Steve Yzerman, and as we all know, Marty St. Louis got his wish. He was dealt to the New York Rangers at the 2014 trade deadline, had some fun moments with them in the playoffs, and then ultimately retired following the 2014-15 season. So again, like I said at the beginning, I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. Do you think Marty St. Louis was being petty, or do you think that it was wrong of Steve Yzerman to not originally select him to the team? game. This next trade request story shouldn't need too much explaining. I'm sure everybody knows about this, the infamous Patrick Roy incident that took place on December 2nd of 1995 when he was in net for the Montreal Canadiens in a game against the Detroit Red Wings. Now, Montreal's head coach at the time, Mario Tremblay, I believe that's how you say his name, and Patrick Roy didn't have the greatest relationship, to say the least, and that game against Detroit on December 2nd of 1995 certainly didn't go well. At one point, the score was 9-1, and that is when Tremblay finally decided to pull Patrick Roy when the score was 9-1 after Roy had already been embarrassed, and Patrick Roy actually said that he believes that was him being punished by his head coach that, again, he didn't have a good relationship with. So when Patrick Roy went back to the bench after being pulled, he put down his stick, took off his helmet, walked past head coach Mario Tremblay a couple of times. Tremblay didn't say a word to Patrick Roy, so he went up to the Canadiens owner who was sitting behind the bench and said, "I've just played my last game for the Montreal Canadiens." There is more intriguing parts to the story as well, but I'm sure you guys have heard it all before. Tremblay and Patrick Roy had quite the heated yelling spat in the locker room after the game in which the Montreal Canadiens lost a final of 11-1 and effectively lost Patrick Roy in the process. Roy was later dealt to the Colorado Avalanche, which at the time was probably the best thing for his career because he went on to have a really great tenure with the Avalanche, winning the Stanley Cup in 2002 along with the Conn Smythe as playoffs MVP. This next story is another really popular one and a really unique one involving Eric Lindros and him being selected first overall in the 1991 NHL draft by the Quebec Nordiques. And Lindros even warned the Quebec Nordiques about this leading up to the 91 draft. He said he would not play for them. They didn't listen. They selected him anyway, and he refused to sign and went back to play another year in the OHL with the Oshawa Generals. Now, the reason why Eric Lindros didn't want to play for the Quebec Nordiques, the only thing Lindros has ever really said is he wouldn't play for a team that was owned by Marcel Abu. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his last name, but the owner of the Nordiques at the time, Lindros said he wouldn't play for that guy. There's a lot of other theories and stuff like that, with Lindros' dad being his agent and he wasn't a fan of the francophone culture, stuff like that, but again, the only thing Lindros ever said is he just didn't want to play for that owner. So after not signing with Quebec, refusing to do so, and going back to the OHL, he could have actually re-entered the draft in 1993, but obviously Quebec didn't want to lose that big of an asset for nothing, so they eventually did send him to the Philadelphia Flyers for a package that included Peter Forsberg, a couple of players and draft picks. It was an absolutely massive blockbuster deal at the time, and it's still having its lasting effects on the NHL today. If you've never seen Steve Dangle's trade tree video on this, I strongly recommend you go and check it out. So that is going to finish up today's video. Those were some of my favorite trade request stories in NHL history for various different reasons. If there's any that you know of that you think I missed or should have included in this video, be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you could, please be sure to leave the video a like. That would be greatly appreciated, and let me know that maybe you guys want to see more of these kinds of videos in the near future. If this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.